Now, in the year 2023, when medical tyranny is supposed to be accepted as the new normal, I'm going to give you a few specific questions to ask anyone who is enforcing the medical tyranny or attempting to enforce the medical tyranny on you. So, for example, when you're attempting to travel and then the person at the airport or wherever says, "Oh, I need, proof of you injecting particular pharmaceuticals into your body, and I also need you to cover your face with this medical device." Or if you want to go to the hospital to get your normal checkup or whatever, or maybe you have a serious injury, you broke a bone or what have you, and you'd like to pay for the service of, getting that sorted. But they tell you, well, in order for us to help you with your injury, first you need to, again, show us proof of injections, and you also have to wear this medical device. Same thing with, say you're trying to go to a concert, music concert, or a sporting event. In all the various places that you may encounter this demand to accept a medical mandate, there, again, are a few questions that I would recommend you ask them. So the first would be to ask them, why do you assume that the government can make a better medical decision for myself than I can? Why do you assume that whatever ordinance you're referring to, right? Because they often say, oh, or whatever guideline, right? Because there's no concrete laws at this point. It's all just recommendations and guidelines, right? But it's really just the law, right? It's just, what the state is telling you you have to do. But they'll say something like, oh, well, we're following, the guidelines of this government agency, or we're following, this ordinance, or we're following this administrative rule, right? Like if you live in Oregon, for example, they'll say, oh, we're following the Oregon Administrative Rule 333-019-1011, which is the masking requirement. So they'll just point to some guideline or rule, given by the government as the reason why they are enforcing the mandate. So it's just an appeal to authority. They're just saying, well, somebody in the government, we don't know who actually wrote this rule, or it's just this this unknown, ambiguous, can't identify anyone in particular. It's just, the bureaucracy of government has produced this rule that says, or this guideline that says, this is the medical device you need to wear, or this is the pharmaceutical you need to take in order to do previously you could do without accepting any kind of medical mandate. So again, first question I would ask is, why do you think that this government bureaucracy can make better medical choices for me than I can? Or if you have a child, why do you think that this government bureaucracy can make a better medical choice for my child than I can make for my child, right? Because that's getting right to the heart of the issue, which is this gaslighting of a population into believing that they are incapable of making medical decisions for themselves, right? It's gaslighting, meaning they're trying to make you think that you can't trust your own judgment, right? Like prior to 2021, you could make your own medical choices. But now things are different somehow, and so you can no longer trust your own judgment. It doesn't make any sense, it's just what's called gaslighting, which is a abusive narcissistic tactic or behavior that is being employed, again, on the entire population. So, again, ask them, why do you think that some government official or just some ambiguous government bureaucracy that produces this rule or guideline with no, specific author, why do you think they are more qualified to make a medical choice for myself than I am? Why am I why are you implying that I'm incompetent? Because that's really what it is, right? It's a subtle form of slander in that they are implying that if you disagree with the guideline, well, you're wrong, so therefore you're incompetent. So it's an implication of incompetence. It's actually slander. Another question you can ask them, if this holds true for you, if this perspective holds true for you, if, for example, you find that your breathing is obstructed, which obviously technically it is when you wear a mask, but if you find it to be obstructed in a way that is unhealthy, right, because you're intaking less oxygen and you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide, and who knows what chemicals are actually in these masks, right, these blue masks that are just, being spread around the world and filling oceans and landfills at exceedingly high rates, right? Like, what exactly is even in this mask that I'm wearing? And, is it healthy for me to, gather bacteria and mucus and so on, right in front of my face like that? You could say, well, I don't believe that's healthy, and I do find it difficult to breathe. I can even feel like I'm going to hyperventilate, right? A valid statement, that is can be verified, right? It's not like it's a totally out there thing to say that a mask obstructs your breathing, right? It's reasonable, it's scientific. So if you say to them, you're asking me to do something that I know is unhealthy for me in the name of health, right? So, but it's theoretical on their part, right? They're saying, well, you may have an illness, and that illness may be contagious, and that illness may spread to someone else, and then that may get the other person very sick. And so because of all these maybes, you have to do something that is definitely not good for your health, as you just stated. So a question you can ask is, why do I need to accept something that definitely harms me in the name of possibly preventing harm? Like, why is the definite harm to myself for administering this medical device, for using this medical device, why is that irrelevant? Why is the immediate harm to myself irrelevant, but the theoretical harm to others relevant, but more relevant? So there is no good answer for that, so it's a good question to ask them. And of course, the same goes for them saying, well, you need to take some pharmaceutical. You could say, well, there's the risk of harm or even death if I take this pharmaceutical. So why are you saying me possibly dying from an adverse reaction is less important than the possibility that me not taking it could somehow harm someone else, right? Again, so it's a definite risk versus a possible risk. They're telling you that the possible risk is actually more important than the definite risk to yourself. So this is also, in a way, slanderous and a kind of a form of gaslighting, because it's basically saying you don't matter. Society matters, right? Like society, just this ambiguous, label for other people, or just, ambiguous in that it's no one in particular, it's everybody besides you, right? Like you're part of society, but you don't matter by yourself. It's really the whole collective that matters. Each individual doesn't really matter. It's the collective that matters, right? So this is collectivism versus individualism. And, they want us to believe that individual rights don't really matter in the name of the collective, right? Which is just a psyop deception to further collectivist tyranny, medical tyranny in particular, in this context, just a excuse for giving them more power over the population, right? In the name of the collective. Okay, the last question you could ask them is, who owns my body? Do I own my body? And if they respond yes, then you can say, okay, well, the owner of a piece of property is the rightful controller of it. So if I own my body, why can't I control my body? And they'll probably just go on a tangent and saying, well, it's for the public good, it's for public safety, yada, 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 right? But they'll sidestep the issue that medical mandates are actually a claim of ownership over your body. Because if you can't make medical decisions for yourself, then that means that those that are making the medical decisions actually are the owner of your body, because they are the rightful controller, right? Why is it that they get to make the medical decision for you? Well, the only reason that could make any kind of sense is if they own you. Because if you own your own body, then part of that ownership, but part of that property right, would include the authority to control it as you see fit. Like what food you want to eat, what medicine you want to take, what clothes you want to wear, what medical devices you want to put on your body or not. So if your mind is still going off on a tangent like, yeah, but safety, what you're missing here is fundamental ethics. And you're also missing the fact that being abused is not a position of safety for an individual or for society. If you think that giving a certain group of people the go-ahead to be abusive because they're somehow more trustworthy, they're somehow perfect and infallible and perfectly trustworthy, never make any mistakes, never do anything bad, which is complete idol worship in particular, especially when the group of people being idolized are currently and historically abusive and violent, openly. When you are appealing to authority in that sense, and yet you think that it's reasonable, you're delusional, right? You're seeing something that isn't true as true. You're saying, well, it's safer to let a violent group of people commit violence against everybody than it is for people to be free from abuse, right? So you're saying that a group of people, a ruling class, let's just say to make it simple, the ruling class can abuse the entire population in the name of the safety of that population. Like that's the fundamental flawed reasoning, right? It just doesn't make any sense at all. Once you recognize that abuse and safety cannot coexist, then you can hopefully snap out of your Stockholm syndrome and recognize, well, they're supposedly keeping me safe from an illness by abusing me, but whether I'm in danger of getting an illness or I'm in danger of being abused, neither are preferable. It's not like possibly getting an illness makes abuse okay, right? Like that's really what you got to recognize is abuse is never a solution to any crisis, whether it's a health crisis or an economic crisis or anything else. The idea that abusing people is actually helping is a contradiction in terms, because abuse is pure evil. It doesn't help anybody that's being abused. The idea that you're helping somebody by abusing them is just false. You can't say, oh, well, it's for your own good, right? Abusers often say that to the person they're abusing, but it doesn't make it true. You know, you might have even a good idea as far as nutrition or medicine, but it doesn't mean that you have the right to push it on someone else. Like, making sure if everyone had like adequate vitamin C levels, for example, right? That would be a good thing. But does that mean that you can force your neighbor to take vitamin C if they're, below the recommended amount? No. And why not? Even though it would benefit them, right? Even though you could say, well, I can scientifically prove that having an adequate amount of vitamin C would be good for them. Why is it still wrong to force feed them the vitamin C? It's because it's abusive, right? And abuse is evil and unjustifiable. So it's the same thing. There's no difference. In the context of medical tyranny, there's absolutely no difference between that and pushing medical devices and vaccines. Zero difference on an ethical level. The only reason you think there's a difference is because you're a delusional idol worshiper. And the sooner you wake up to that and end your delusion and end your idol worshiper, the better off you will be, and the better off all of society will be. All right, thanks for listening.